My name is Jana Beth Hart. How's everybody today? Sweet. Come on in. I'm just getting started. Last group was late, so. I'm an engineering manager at Clever, which is an ed tech company that does platforms for grade school, K through 12, for all their programs, stuff like that. We're hiring if you want to come work for us. I'm hiring two senior engineers, actually, for full stack. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk about how to start your own diversity-based employee resource group. So, let's get started. This is the agenda for today. It's going to cover, what energy is, what it can do for you, how to get, management and HR on board, and like some of the cost structures, and then how to get membership and deal with potentially having anonymous members, and then also what your leadership team is going to have to do. So, what's an ERG? Oh, by the way, the slides are extremely verbose. I'm not going to read them directly, but that's so when I send you all the PDF later, you can get all the information I'm telling you. So the ERG is an employee-driven diversity group. Usually they're voluntary. Usually they're part of the company themselves, although some companies like AT&T has made them 501Cs independent of the company, which is kind of an interesting concept, which means they can donate to them and write it off on their taxes, so it's kind of smart of them, to be honest. Generally speaking, an ERG is built around a diversity group, like LGBTQIA+, Black Indigenous people of color, Black engineers, women, sometimes veterans. My last company had a ERG for parents. Not really a minority, but a lot of individual things that HR and the company should take into account for, especially during COVID times, of people who have children. And also one I was trying to get started before I left that last job, something for neurodivergence. Those of us who are on the autism spectrum or have ADHD or any other non-typical brain chemistry that means we see the world and work a little bit different than everybody else. And accommodations are what typically you want to get out of an ERG. It's like, we want to tell HR how to set our policies. We want to tell HR what we need to work properly, so we feel safe and welcome at the office. The goal being that you can come to work without any masks on and be your true self and feel safe and comfortable and not be harassed or even have any microaggressions against you. So, moving on. The benefits of an ERG. In other words, how to sell this to your company. One, diversified talent. It's been shown time and time again. You can probably find this in every single business publication since the last decade, maybe the last 20 years even, depending on how progressive they were, that a monoculture hinders out-of-the-box thinking because everybody thinks the same way. But if you have a diverse workforce, you get all these different points of view from different cultures, different ethnicities, religions, upbringings, and all those shape different worldviews, and they see problems in a different light. And that helps you solve all the problems you have, whether you're trying to write education software or, build a better wheel. What do your customers need? And so, beyond that, it gives the company a lot of interesting perks. One, you get diverse people to work for you. And in doing so, you get some social capital. You join some organizations like Women Who Code, for example. You get to advertise that you're part of Women Who Code. Women Who Code says you're a partner of theirs. That's social capital. It does a few things. It makes the company look good, which they always want to do, and hopefully they mean it when they do it. But hey, if they're willing to throw money at it, that's close enough for now. Um, for example, I read this yesterday. I don't know if any of y'all are gamers. Wizards of the Coast, who owns Dungeons and Dragons, they have an old trademark called TSR, which was the original Dungeons and Dragons creator. Well, because of some weird technicality, someone snatched that up, a descendant or relative of the original people who made it. And they started putting out racist and bigoted and transphobic content for games, and then Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro just took them to court and said, you're going to stop that because it's, one, it's bigoted, and two, we don't want to be associated with that name, with that at all. So that is kind of the kind of things that E or Gs can help a company have. Also, your customers care about that now. And that's a big selling point to CEOs. It's like, oh, we need new markets, we need to get more revenue. Well, if you cater to minorities and underrepresented people, boom, there's your whole new revenue stream that aren't your typical cis white population. That's still the majority in this country, but not for long. So that goes into why does your company care about it? And again, it goes straight to their bottom line. They're a diverse workforce where they feel safe, means they're going to stay there longer. They have better job satisfaction. They don't feel they need to go find a new place to work. Even if they could get more money somewhere else, they feel comfortable here and they feel safe, and it's enriching because of it's an environment they can be themselves in. This prevents turnover. It means you have to hire new people, all the costs associated with that, plus all the lost knowledge when someone leaves. The longer they've been there, the less knowledge you have when they go, no matter how much you try to get them to write it down. And again, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, is a good PR move. And as much as I hate to, tout capitalism and what they need, this is a good way to get an inroads into them. It gives them a better view in the public's eye. If you time it right, it means some bad stuff gets washed away because they only have good stuff to talk about. But yeah, that PR, that recognition that you are caring about your underrepresented people is good for attracting new talent, new markets, and new customers. And again, the last point here is all those people think differently, so you're more likely to get out-of-the-box solutions to the problems you're currently facing or the future problems you're going to have. Oh, by the way, you can stop and ask a question anytime you want. Oh, there will be a Q&A at the end. I am talking kind of fast because it's what I do. So if anything comes across as non-understood, please raise your hand. Let me repeat it for you. So, talking about E or G membership. Clearly you want more people in it. It's kind of like a union. The bigger it is, the more clout you have. However, sometimes membership is problematic. For example, if you have a pride organization, not everybody wants to be known as being out. They're not out at home, they're not out at work, they're afraid, it doesn't feel right, they haven't made their minds up, they're not sure. You want to be able to have an anonymous way to get feedback from them and to make sure you don't target them for company emails and newsletters. You have to do the entire company. More obvious memberships like people of color or women, it's easier to have memberships, raise their hand and join the group because they can't hide their identity. It's there. It's visible no matter what they do. But the ones that can hide and blend, that are just trying to pass off as normal, and that includes trans people, gay people, neurodivergence. Like, getting known as an autistic, especially if it goes on your medical record anywhere, can be detrimental later on for diagnosis, pre-existing conditions. If you decide to leave the country, go somewhere else, immigration's an issue. Or if you're coming into the country, immigration's an issue when it comes to neurodivergence. You get knocked down a peg, unfortunately. So when you make this, when you make an ERG, consider the type of people that you're going to have in there, and their safety has to come first, because otherwise you're kind of blowing the whole point of it. It's also good to work with HR on this, because they understand ways and methods to get that kind of safe feedback without having to identify people. There's lots of things like anonymous Google Forms and that kind of stuff you can just get feedback from and whatnot. And HR is really good about gathering data without having to identify people or anonymizing it somehow. Still, though, the smaller your demographic, regardless of whether you try to anonymize it or not, the more likely it is to be able to identify people. Leadership. It does take a village. There is so much you have to do when you have an ERG. You have to plan the meetings and the events you're going to have. You have to budget, handle a budget, request a budget, predict a budget for the next year, etc. And predicting a budget, trust me, always double what you need and then negotiate down. Just like with a salary, because companies are willing to help out and get that PR, but they're not willing to spend much money doing it. So the cheaper you can be, the better they like it, but take that money from them because they have it. And they're just going to use it somewhere else, probably for a CEO bonus, which, it's better off with us, right? You have to be able to work with HR. You're going to be helping them with recruiting, retention, changing the guidelines in your employee handbook, teaching executives what it means to have an unrepresented group with you and how that can help out, and how to help them come on board. You also end up, working with ways to market this so that the company gets the benefits of having you outside the company. Their non-tangibles, their PR, their clout, which they see as, from an executive and shareholder perspective, it's a non-tangible benefit to them. And as horrible it is to talk in those terms of executives and shareholders and stockholders, you have to kind of understand where they're coming from to speak their language. And finally, you have to be able to help organize education for the company. And I'll go into that in a little bit, what the education opportunities are. But you want to get speakers, have events, go to local things, and put out newsletters and emails on a regular cadence so you don't lose your audience. So the last point here, this one, you need to find other passionate people who want to do the same thing as you, because you have so much to do, and most of the time, running an ERG is not your day job, and they don't want to pay you to do it, so they want you to do as little as possible per person, like a couple hours a week at most. So you get help to do it. You either get more people on your leadership team, like my Pride group had 5 people, including me, with a couple of floaters who did other things occasionally. And we were pretty set for what we had to do. And that was useful because we didn't want to form committees per se, because that required, not anonymizing people. Like the women's group, I only had 2. They ended up forming a lot of subcommittees to help get things done, because the membership is willing to help out when you don't have enough time to do everything yourself. And you don't. No matter how much you want to, you do not have that time. Setting up an ERG takes a tremendous amount of time and pressure, and you have to kind of write out the benefits, your potential budget, your reasoning for do it, what HR wants to have out of it, and all those benefits I was mentioning earlier. That takes some time to put that together if they're not already willing to let you do it. And then also putting together all the things for the events and the meetings and the information and the education. You can't do that alone. You'll never get anything done. So it takes a village. Please get help. And likely you're not the only person who wants this. I mean, as a woman, you can just look in the room and go, hey, you want to join ERG with me? It'd be great. A little bit harder to find some of the more groups that kind of want to stay hidden, like LGBT and neurodivergence, but you end up meeting them through other things in the company anyway. And some people are out and flamboyant about and like, yeah, let's do it. My second person, the first person I got to work with me sat behind me when I first started, and every day when 5 o'clock hit and the workday was over, he put on Britney Spears, started dancing to it, and said, yeah, free Britney, and was so flamboyant. It was amazing. An obvious choice. Not only can you not do it oh, I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about membership. So when do you have any advice so I just started the first ERG at our company, and it was kind of easy at first because I had already had relationships with certain people, and I was able to kind of like, because ours is for Black people at Cypress, but as we're like new people begin to start, I don't necessarily want to be like, hey, welcome to the company. By the way, do you identify as Black and do you want to join our ERG? So it's like, how do you kind of like reach that general audience, like when people are onboarding and things like that, so that you're not, because I mean, that could also be like an HR issue, you know, if that person either identifies or they don't want to be associated in any way, like you said.
Yeah. There's two ways to do it, a more direct way and a more indirect way. The indirect way is you have regular newsletters that go to the whole company, an email, and they'll just see it the next time it comes around. The more direct way is if your company has any kind of like onboarding process where they spend a couple hours talking about the company and whatnot, you talk to HR and you talk to people involved in that and say, can we slip in information about all the ERGs we have? Especially if there's more than one. And that way it's like people get informed of what's out there and they can come seek you out directly. And it also tells people, hey, we have ERGs, maybe you want to start your own on a topic on a group we don't cover already. HR will love that. Yes?
I wanted to comment on yours. So I'm in the process of creating diversity and inclusion at my company, or just building it out further. I don't make any mention of anything like this during, I do onboardings too, but like I don't make any mention of it during onboarding because at the time that they're getting started, like we just want you to be focused on being a good employee, like just be good at what you're doing. What I've started to do during people's now 6-month or mid-year checkpoint is, since I'm the person that's heading that up, having that conversation, like, look, now that you've had opportunity to get acclimated, here are all the other opportunities we have for you to get involved. And I throw that out there then.
That's good, yeah.
You know, and I don't say, oh, you know, you're Black, you want to do this. No, yeah. I think I started, like, grouping us together because that's something I can identify with. I can identify being with Black, and I can identify being a woman. So we have a group for women. We have a group for African Americans at my company, but I wait. Like, I just give it time because people are going to find their thing.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I worry about. Like, I just don't want to be like, all right, cool, you just started your computer. Like, do you want to join this group?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. If I know where, like, okay, I'm the only African American person on the engagement team.
Okay.
So I have gotten questions where it's like, give me the real deal. Like, is this the company that I want to work for? Because I'm the welcome wagon, so I'm the first person. And it's like, some people think it's just a facade. Like, okay, she drank the Kool-Aid. Like,
but I think it's also different because I think it's also different because your experience is different than mine. Me being a lighter complexion, people also, sometimes they can't immediately tell that I identify as Black. And so I never want to be offensive because I'm the president, but I'm also the lightest complexion.
But you know what, though? It's usually the lighter complected people that I speak with that come to me and they're like, so what's up? And I'm like, okay, we can talk about it off the record, call me later. You know, it's one of those type things where I'm like, we can talk about it, but you know, this is still my job at the end of the day. I want you to know that you're going to come here and be respected. But I did start formalizing and creating that safe space because people started coming to me and they were like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? When I started working for the company I'm with, there were 8 of us. Now there are 20.
Cool. That's great. Some other things you could do, depending on how open the company is about it in the public, when you put job requirements out there, job openings, you can talk about, you have diversity, inclusion, DEI initiatives, and you have, ERGs associated with, blah, blah, blah. We're a diverse company, we enjoy this kind of diversity. That helps signal people too, and then they'll see that and go, oh, I want to work here, and then they'll seek it out and they join. Also, just one second. If you have other groups in the company that aren't ERG-based, like we have for our engineering, like a front-end guild, a resiliency guild, and an accessibility guild, and a back-end guild, that kind of stuff. Those are things that your new engineers, for example, want to join. So you can include those with the ERG listings as things to get involved within the company in general. And that doesn't just single out ERGs. That says, here's all the things that the company offers for, getting involved.
And that's how it's like we're creating this learning and development space for you. We're, creating a space for, like you said before, parents. Like I'm gonna work on getting a working parents group, expanding out the Black, Indigenous, people of color group. And I told the team, I was like, it's purely based on what I see represented today.
Yeah.
It's not because I haven't forgotten, I've forgotten about you. It's just, this is where I see we have the most participation, like most representation.
An ERG doesn't really work with just one person. Exactly. It's a good start, but you need more people.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people.
Yeah.
You could be an ERG by yourself if you want to.
Sure, you could, yeah. Yes?
No, just real quick. The first 6 months of being employment for any person of color is important. So ERGs are great, but mentoring and understanding where they fit and providing their mentorship as they walk in the door is much more important because it has an issue of retention. So if you don't have an ERG, if you can't set something, if you don't have a DEI, a person who's focused on DEI or someone who's trying to look at, getting that person assigned as a mentor real quickly allows them to understand the culture, because if they don't, they're gone in 6 months.
What I've noticed, we have our first junior developer that we brought to our company, and we don't typically hire straight out of college, or we don't typically hire anybody with less than about 2 years of experience. We're very top heavy, very mid senior level, and so he is African American. And I was like, look, you're coming into a different environment where you were 150 students to one teacher. Now you're 150 teachers to one student.
Yeah.
We don't expect you to know anything, but we want you to ask us everything. If you don't feel comfortable, like, I hired you, come talk to me.
That informal mentorship is important. Not pushback because in the space of learning, we practice some of those pieces. It's a great tool strategy. But if you do not watch that, and that's with any group, any group, that mentorship piece is really important. Even the person who has to experience or see the culture is what's important. If you're not trained in the culture, if they can't exist in that culture, they can't be a culture. And that's
If it's possible, I'm sorry, let me interrupt. Go ahead. Yeah, that's really, all those are great points, and I really appreciate them. And I forgot entirely to mention internships in my slides. So thank you for reminding me. ERGs are great for internship sponsorship, or even getting an intern to come on. The women's group started an entire mentorship program within the company. It wasn't just for women, but it was for anyone who wanted to get leadership guide or anything else. There were majority of women who participated because they're the ones who don't feel like they have people to talk to in higher positions. So they help with that too. And absolutely any kind of we just said it. Mentorship, thank you, is really good. So, absolutely. We do an onboarding buddy in my company now. When you join, you get someone who kind of walks you through things you don't know for like a couple of weeks, for the first 6 weeks. They're good at talking about that as well.
It's more of a comment and observation. I've been an engineer for a very long time, and when you join new organizations, when ERGs exist, they don't always. What I have found very helpful is community right off the top, because especially now that we're all fully remote, I just joined a really good company earlier this year, and finding community, whether it's, doesn't matter which ERG, it has been helpful to find people that I can relate to.
Absolutely.
And it does help with retention, especially now, because like people are like, oh, 3 or 4 months, they're gone, right?
It
So
also-
you do have to be able to find like those people, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think this is a great conversation to have, but every company does it differently. But the bottom line is, if you don't have community, it's not worth you staying there. It's about the culture, it's not about the bag.
Honestly, sometimes the meetings that we have turn into bitch sessions about what we've seen or what's going on in the world. And, you know, sometimes you just take that to HR at the end of it going, hey, this is what we've been hearing. Can you help address this?
At my last company, there was a sort of subsect of the LGBT, of the Pride, ERG, for polyamorous people.
Uh-huh.
And that's a scary one to come out in.
Yeah.
But our bitch sessions turned into hookups. HR was like, I would like to formally share the policy on dating your coworker.
Yeah. That's a tricky one. I agree. It tends to happen in any type of group where you're similar and you have a liking to that type of person you're with.
Mercifully, Salesforce was like, it's all good. We might just move you to a different department.
Yeah. I had a thought, it vanished. I'll get back to it, I'm sure. Okay, moving on though. You're not alone out there. There's other groups that do it. There's other companies that do it. And they're very willing to talk to you about it. There are partner organizations that deal with whatever unrepresented group you're talking about, whether it's polyamorous, pride, black people, other people of color, Asian Americans, neurodivergents, veterans, mothers, fathers. There's some group out there, actually there's probably a dozen to be honest, that are already doing that as a professional nonprofit. They love to hear from you. They can help you with guidelines. Like if you go to the Human Rights Campaign, they have a whole list of guidelines for diversity and inclusion. And if you can get yourself on the HRC's Corporate Equality Index, that is just bonus. Because everyone looks at that who is not typical. Unrepresented, because it's like, this just tells me how well the company handles things. So it usually takes a little bit of change within the company if your policies don't match perfectly. But that kind of PR goes a long way. Marketing loves it, which means the executives will get behind it, and so will HR to help try to get to that, as long as they have the power to make that change. Some companies are owned by other companies that they can't make the changes to because of that, unfortunately. You had a question real quick? HRC? Oh, Human Rights Campaign, HRC, yes. If you ever see the equality stickers, the blue with the yellow in the middle, that's HRC. They fight for all kinds of human rights, for pride, for people in different countries, everything. But these organizations like to partner with you. Partnerships aren't necessarily free, I'll get to that in a minute on budgeting, but partnerships mean they get clout as the organization to say, hey, we're working with so many other companies. Here's how many people we're working with. If you're AT&T, I want to keep picking on them, but I do, and you're on like, I don't know, out in text list, they can point to that and say, see, we have large corporations backing us. And then in turn, that corporation can say, see, we are supporting this group. The other thing is most times partnerships and sponsorships aren't cheap, but it's not that much money compared to a large company or most companies' budgets in general. There's benefits from it for your company and your ERG too. They've also got speakers who are willing to come talk to you. Often those speakers are part of the package you pay for sponsorship or partnership. They come, they have a presentation, they teach, they'll customize it for your company, they'll teach about whatever type of thing you need for the company, like, oh, we need to teach about how microaggressions are a problem, or how we can reach this particular market segment because we're not touching them and they're underrepresented, and we appreciate that. So that's a good thing too. And yeah, it's PR, they love it. And it also shows the workforce, your potential people you're going to recruit, that hey, we actually care about this. Come work with us and help us make us more diverse, because the better your diversity in the company, the better we all feel about it. Talking is thirsty work. Okay, budget approval. I get the cost on the next slide. This is the approval part. Why? Why should your company care? All the aforementioned reasons, like education. These people who can come in and speak professionally about diversity, inclusion, equity, justice, how to spot unconscious bias and overcome it, that sort of thing. They are professionals at doing this. They know how to come in and teach it in a way that's blameless. No one feels bad about learning it. It's not a, oh, you're being bad because you're a cis white male and you're not, you have all this bias and you're being a bad person. It's, here's what you should look for. And if you see it, here's how to come around it. So it keeps people from being blamed, which is sometimes what happens if you have more passionate people in the ERG trying to teach it. Sometimes they'll be a little bit too passionate. It's a good thing, but sometimes it can drive people away from learning, which is the whole goal. Again, more social capital and better places to recruit from. If you want diverse people, you need to go where the diverse people are at. You need to go to Refactor website or the Slack channel or Women Who Code and talk about what you've got open. The aforementioned Out in Tech, which is a pride organization for tech people. There's, I think, National Association of Black Engineers, I think is what it is. I can't remember exactly. There's numerous women's organizations and several pride, lots of veterans groups too. There's some neurodivergent groups out there as well. You have to be careful of what their message is. Sometimes they're, like Autism Speaks is a bad organization. But I forget what the other one is called. It's one of the ones you don't want to talk to. So you want to find the ones that are actually really inclusive and not medical essentialists.
Another group is people who are formerly incarcerated.
Oh, that's a good one too. I didn't think about that. Say it again. Cool, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a big problem in this country too, because people get incarcerated for almost any reason.
Another thought that I had was that, like, just because a group is a minority at your company, they might not, like, be a minority in general. Like, we have a group like this at our company for Canadians, because they're just, like, less than half our company, and they have, like, different concerns and needs from, like, management than the Americans do.
When I was at Black & Decker, State of Black & Decker, there was an organization for Latin people, Asian Pacific Islanders. There was, I think they expanded the Black engineers group to be like African descent or something like that. I can't remember how they actually titled it. It was a little bit more, it's better word than what I'm saying here. So absolutely, you can definitely have groups from different locations to help out with what that means. Especially if you have a lot of immigrant people, that helps talk about the problems coming into the country and working on visas and that kind of stuff. So
I don't think Canadians are, like, marginalized in general, but at our company, like, they do kind of get overlooked when they're making decisions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the goal of most ERGs, for us as employees, is to get the company to hear our concerns and fulfill our needs. So absolutely, do it. So you can do local events, like go to a Pride March or Pride Parade. Most Pride events in the cities you can get into for free, but if you want to have like a sponsorship or like be front of the parade, it does cost some money. I'll get into costs in a little bit. But there's a lot of those, especially whatever month it happens to be. Women's History Month, Black History Month, etc. There's always local events that are happening within the city. They're usually relatively inexpensive, per person or free. So, company events. You've got a women's group. Well, let's have a meeting. Let's talk. If you're in an office, get a conference room, get some cookies flowing, get some cookies delivered, or breakfast, or coffee, and sit around and have a talk with each other. You can center around a topic or a theme for that day, but the goal is just to have you come together and form those bonds, that camaraderie of you're not alone. And then swag. Everyone loves swag. I'm wearing swag. A lot of people here are wearing swag. Swag is awesome. We all love swag. Swag does two wonderful things. Well, it does three. It fills your wardrobe, or your hutch with coffee mugs or whatever, and it lets you show that yes, I have pride where I work because they support me. And it lets the company say we have pride in our diverse individuals, and here's how we're supporting them. And that's a win-win for everybody, except for the bottom line. You got to talk the CFOs into it sometimes, but usually they'll agree to it. It's not that much money. So costs. I love that tag. It's speakers cost how much? I'll start with speakers. Speakers are expensive, relatively speaking. For you and I, it'd be really expensive to go ask for someone to come speak that costs $3,000 to $5,000. But for a company, especially if you can make it company-wide, they're a lot more likely to accept that as their budget, for part of their budget. And it might not even come out of your budget. You can share it with other ERGs, or you can just get HR or marketing to pay for it directly because it's for the whole company and not just you. Partnerships. Partnerships can be really expensive depending on how much you want to get out of it as a company. Mentioning your name is usually $5,000. You might get a speaker with that. If you want swags, partnerships, ongoing things, year in after year out, conferences to go to with them representing you at conferences, that's going to cost more money. It can go to $20,000. It can go even higher depending on how much money you're willing to spend. Like at the Atlanta Pride event, a sponsorship started at a bronze is like $5,000. You got to be in the parade behind the gold, the silver, them is you. You got your name on the board and all the advertisement for it. You were in the brochures. You were always behind gold and silver, but you were there. Gold and silver had much bigger logos, but yours was still there. The gold and silvers were 10, 20,000. Platinums or diamonds were they're the ones who put a stage on, like Coca-Cola. They're ridiculously expensive. Local events, like Pride and stuff, they can be free for members just to go. Oops, bounced it on my table. You can just show up to Pride for free. Doesn't cost anything. You can go as a group. Doesn't cost anything. Other events can be costly, especially if there are big historical events, and so you want to consider how much it's worth for the extras for that, and whether or not the company's willing to pay for it. Generally speaking, they'll say if you can get it for free, we don't want to pay for it. But if you can convince them the benefit to it, they'll pay for it, usually, especially if it's more company-wide. The bigger the audience within the company, the more they're willing to pay for it. Everyone loves a parade, right? Then there's the more small things, like office events and swag. These vary in cost, often by the economy, and during COVID, it was really hard to get things shipped, that kind of thing. So, but generally speaking, an office event, if you want to have a meal for people, like an actual, you want to have, say, Moe's come in or Willie's come in and put up a lunch with all make your own burritos and tacos, that's probably going to be about $30 per person, roughly speaking, with a minimum. They can go really fancy and have full day events that cater multiple meals, and that gets up to $50 a person. Or you can just do coffee. Somebody goes and gets bagels and coffee, and that's $50 total, expensive, no matter how many people show up. Swag, often the most expensive part of swag is the shipping. And that's the biggest problem with remote work during COVID and the aftermath, is that you got to ship all this stuff to people's homes. So you got to consider that as part of the cost. But like a mug, a custom-made mug, 10, 12 bucks in like blocks of 50 or 100. Same thing with t-shirts. They go up in cost the more you get. I mean, they go down per capita the more you get. But you can definitely get them within the $30 range for most t-shirts, including shipping, usually a little bit less. And like some people do like backpacks or some big things, and those can get a little pricey. But this is the kind of thing you have to think about what you want to do for your ERG in a year. Like, I want to have a speaker. The speakers I have lined up are these 3 people, they cost this much. How many can I do? What partnerships we can maintain for that year? And most partnerships only last a year. So you gotta remember that, keep going if you want to. What events do I want to have? Local or office? What kind of swag do I want to give out? You have to remember to think about that when you ask for your budget. And again, double what you ask for, and then you can get what you want. The other big thing ERGs are really good for is workplace education. Most companies want to have a way to prevent harassment in general, because that's a legal problem. No one wants to get sued over harassment. That doesn't really cover much. It covers some of the basics, like sexual harassment, the ones that are legally defined, sexual harassment, racial harassment, that kind of thing. But those don't cover everything we experience every day at the office. We have microaggressions, wow, if you could just smile some in the meeting, you'd be much happier. Or, you look really smart in that suit for a X person. Or, I wouldn't know you're trans, that's awesome. I would never have noticed. That kind of thing. Oh, you're a lesbian? I got a friend over here who's a lesbian. Or, yeah, exactly. By the way, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, I am a queer trans woman who's also polyamorous, so I have a lot of things. And the best part about my company, Clever, I don't have to hide any of that. I talk about this stuff openly. It's amazing. No one cares. No one blinks an eye. Some ask polite questions, but no one blinks an eye. So combating microaggressions for diverse groups is a big thing to talk about. Followed directly by unconscious bias, which usually feeds into the microaggressions. Unconscious bias, we all have it. I could give a whole talk on unconscious bias. But as ERG leaders, part of our responsibility is to help teach people what those biases might be, where to look for them, what society might have ingrained in them. So, it's, that was a weird one. I'm not going to read those. That's weird. Okay. So, education is great for those 2 things alone, which just make us feel better at work. We're not targeted by anything bad. Then we can teach people how to embrace diversity. All those things about how we're not a monoculture, we have better ideas, we can think outside the box. We can teach that to people. We can tell HR how to meet our needs, because they don't know. They really don't. They might have 1 or 2 diverse people or diverse groups in HR, and they're usually Black or women, or women. And that doesn't cover everybody. It doesn't cover how to help people who want to come out of the office, whether that be gay or lesbian or trans. It doesn't help people who have ADHD and might need some accommodations because of it. It doesn't help disabled people who have physical needs that aren't being met in the office or at home. Parents who have to take care of their kids because someone at daycare got COVID, or as one of my employees had, hand, foot, and mouth outbreak. He told me that yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, take all the time you need. You have to work around their schedule, help them out. And then we can do the fun thing about talking about ourselves. We all like talking about ourselves. The history of pride, the intersectionality of pride. A black trans woman helped start it. That's amazing. No one hears about that unless you're one of us. The history of women's liberation, how the suffragettes were racist and were only there for white people, but they got women the right to vote. That kind of thing. And you can also share, like, a Diwali celebration. That's amazing. I never knew what Diwali was until I worked with a company that had a bunch of people of Asian descent who were from India, Hindu, I think, that were celebrating that. And I'm like, that's really cool. And you get to have little festivals around that sort of thing. It's amazing. It's awesome. And that's where you help celebrate your diversity. You're like, here we are. We have a bounty of new things you've never encountered because you don't live in our world. They're really fun. We have great traditions. We have great stories. Come listen to us. Come learn from us. Come join us.
Can I just, you're probably going to cover this, can I just add two things? So when you do unconscious bias training and microaggression training, definitely add in allyship and belonging. But there's also multiple levels for those trainings, because if you just do the first intro level, it doesn't get you to the place you want to go. And if you don't include a second, or what we call unconscious bias level 2, or microaggression level 2, it teaches you what to do, the tools and practices how to actually understand and recognize that. That's important. And allyship, I find, is mentoring and internships happen, because if you don't have a group and you feel like you're not in a specific group, the majority has the ability to be an ally. So the minority has the ability to be an ally. So you need to understand how to be an ally in those places where you can actually go and build up. And it does help in education.
Absolutely.
You don't know how to be an ally or understand, because people start doing these programs and you leave people out.
Yeah.
Unknowingly. So belonging becomes an issue, and allyship is really important to make those things grow.
Version 2 is going to include allyship, because you're absolutely right. As Sunny Black and Decker, we, as the Pride group, we gave everybody a chance to print out signs that say, I am a safe place. And they put it on their office door. And you can just walk in and talk to them about anything they needed. And you can do that. That's a very low entry level for non-members of the group to help out who care. And that helps too. Having, a pride mug on your desk, or a historical black woman mug on your desk, is a good indicator that you are someone that you can talk to about this stuff, even if they don't look like that to you. Because they care enough to show that that's important to them. And often, your allies are going to come from your peers more than your executives or your management. The good news is that as the younger generation has moved in, Gen Z and millennials coming into the workforce and taking over, we're a lot more accepting of diversity and willing to be inclusive. And so that's just changing the workforce. A lot of what you see with corporations these days supporting stuff is because the younger generation started working and going, hey, why aren't we doing this? And told them all the things I've been telling you about why it's good for the company. And they listened. Even if they didn't believe it, they listened. They might not believe it themselves, but they look at that bottom line and go, okay, we'll do it. Sociopaths don't really have beliefs. They just care about the money. So, that's the end of the official presentation. Are there any more questions? We have, I don't know, I guess we were supposed to be out of here like 10 minutes ago, but we started late because they went over. But lunch is in 5 minutes, so I don't want to hold you over lunch, okay? But I'm willing to answer any questions you have, either now or during lunch.